Okay, welcome back to Great Area. I am very, very happy to have Ben Walsh with me today. How are you doing? How are you feeling today?
Yeah, all good. Busy day in work, but just about to get in the studio after this, but yeah, all good.
Yeah, still producing regularly then, I'm guessing, because I know you've already had quite a busy start to the year, but you're still keeping at it with your production on a weekly basis, I'm guessing.
Yeah, you've got to in this game, all right, it's good to have breathers now and again, but you're only as good as your last track, aren't you? So there's always things to learn in this game. So yeah, constantly producing every week, every minute I can in the evenings and the weekends as well.
Yeah. No, God, it's impressive, to be honest. No, you've got to keep at it, like you say, and it's just something you've got to be persistent with, but very impressive. It's been great to see your output in the last year, the amount of stuff you've been coming out with, releases after releases. It's exciting, and I'm looking forward to seeing what's coming this year for you as well. So this interview is mainly focused on like your whole origin story. So just how you got into music, kind of the history of how you got to where you are now, to be honest. So with that being said, I think a good place to start is thinking back to childhood and the music you listened to in childhood. Now, I read online that growing up until you were about 20 years old, you were a big fan of the kind of festival big room house artists like Swedish House Mafia, Avicii, Hardwell, and then that changed after you were about 20. But growing up, did you listen to any other genres of music, or was it always like electronic for you?
Mainly it was electronic. I don't even know what. I think it just started from, like you said, the Swedish House Mafia. I think the people I was hanging around with in the area I'm from, it's like right in the middle of Manchester and Liverpool, but a lot of my mates are from the Liverpool area, and it's EDM is big there. So I just sort of fell into that trap. But with me being in the middle of Liverpool and Manchester, I also had that sort of indie side as well, where it was like the Cortinas, and I had a bit of both. So I enjoyed going the gigs, but I also enjoyed going like the festivals and the rave scene and whatever. But then even my parents, they've always been big, especially my dad. They've always been big into his music. So he was, what he classes a mod, should we say, back in the days. He sort of started to try and get that music into me, but. Yeah, I mean, I listened to music from all types really, but it was predominantly, the electronic dance music was the big one for me really.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's funny to hear that as well, because it was very similar with me as well growing up. Going to house parties as a teenager. A lot of what you hear was EDM, Swedish House Mafia, and all of that was so big at the time, wasn't it? But so that's really interesting actually to hear. So when you hit 20, from what I could read online, you shifted more in the tech house direction. You started getting more into that kind of the clubbier, like tech house type of stuff. I was wondering, what do you think caused your music taste to shift more in that direction? Do you think it was just like a natural shift that happened? Do you think it's maybe because EDM in the UK, maybe the trends changed musically with what people were listening to? What do you think caused that shift for you with your taste?
To be honest with you, I was still listening to EDM up until about 3 or 4 years ago, until it started to really hurt my ear, should we say, in some way, and it wasn't the EDM that brought quite a lot of emotion and excitement. So I think when the likes of Patrick Topping and Richy Ahmed were coming from the scene, I think it was like 2014, 2015, it was like Forget by Patrick Topping, the drums by Richy Ahmed. It was that sort of era. That's when I started to properly get into like the rave scene and going around like the country. And I think just naturally when I got into that, and with me again being where I was, I had like Circus down the road, half an hour down the road in Liverpool. I had Wales Project down half an hour down the road the other way in Manchester. So I think because there was more events of that music coming through, I ended up obviously had like likes of Solardo as well coming through. I just started to gravitate towards that music, and I think you either then like it or you don't. And I was just starting to pick it up more and more. And obviously, I think as that scene grew, I was starting to grow with it in terms of like liking the music more and more. But there was still an element for quite a long time that I still loved, you know, the Hardwell, the Sebastian Grosso, the LSO, all that, you know, Sweet House Mafia, like you said. So I was still going to both type of events, which was weird because obviously if you go into like this sort of like deep house sort of tech house event, and then obviously at the same time, you know, the next day or the following weekend I was going to this heavy EDM sort of night. So it was a weird combination, but it worked for what I liked. And then at the same time I was still sort of going like to the Cortinas as well. So it was a weird combination. But yeah, I just think as I grew older, I realised, and I got into the music scene a little bit more, and thought, yeah, I like listening to this music a lot more. I realised then that was, as maybe, I don't know, maybe some artists started to die off in terms of the EDM scene. They started to fade away, and, you know, likes of Hardwell started like having time away, and obviously Sweet House Mafia stopped and all that. And I think as that just started to move away, the tech house scene grew massive, and I just went with that, and just, yeah, because I liked it and I enjoyed listening to that music. I think that's just where it grew. But definitely, you know, you had like I said, Patrick Topping, Hot Since '82, Green Velvet, Richy Ahmed, all them when they started coming through. That was when I was like, yeah, this is my type of music.
Yeah, makes sense, definitely. It's good to hear as well. You've always been quite open-minded with your music. I had no idea you were into your you know, indie as well, Cortinas, all of that. So that is really good to hear, actually. So I wanted to ask you a bit about where you grew up. I know you said you grew up in Warrington, which is it's a town kind of in between Liverpool and Manchester, right? So clubbing wise, when it comes to the electronic music scene that you kind of got involved in growing up, or were you clubbing more in Manchester or more in Liverpool, or was it kind of split between the two?
I would probably say it was quite evenly split. Maybe more Liverpool, just because I had more mates from that area, and all the people I was mates with around here, we wanted to go to Liverpool more often. But you obviously had Store Street with Wales Project, and that was just like, I still say to this day, I'd love to get married there. It was just my favourite. Ring up with it or something. I just love it there. Don't get me wrong, like the Depot now is like still an amazing venue, but like, you know, it's like one of the places you create so many memories, it's hard to come away from. And it was a little bit similar with Circus. They changed a few times, but I went to a lot of the Circus events at Camp and Furnace, which they no longer do there anymore. They've grew bigger and better into like warehouse sort of vibe. But yeah, I would say it was even split. In Warrington, you see, there was a couple of events when, like I said, they had like Patrick Topping, Heidi, Richy Ahmed. You had a few names that were coming through, which helped because obviously they were a lot cheaper, and I was still able to listen to that type of music I liked. But I knew that, you know, where the scene was, I preferred going to the more established clubs where you get a much stronger lineup as well. And obviously it was more often as well in the two cities. So yeah, I would say it was evenly split. Like sometimes I was doing like Friday and Saturdays, one in Circus on like Wales Project on a Friday, and I go to Circus on the Saturday, just because when I got when I got to that point, it was just like I loved that scene so much and loved that music so much. It was just I didn't want to come away from it. It's what I live for at the weekends and whatever. So it's just, I just started to fall into that, but I would say it was evenly split.
Mm-hmm. God, no, that's really eye-opening, actually. And in a way, now that I think about it, I suppose you had the best of both worlds, because, you know, living in between two massive cities with such big, vibrant club cultures, you could just, you know, pick and choose each day. That's so brilliant. Like Friday in one city, Saturday in the next.
I think as well, on that note, obviously, we've been near Liverpool, Manchester, even like the train lines, you know, sometimes I would go down to London or go down to like Leeds, or go to Leeds, and you know, again, because the train lines were so easily connected, it wasn't like we were in the middle of nowhere. You could just literally just get a train and find an event just as you're finishing work and get on a train and off you go type of thing. So it was, I think I was very lucky in the location. I've got a couple of mates who, you know, live in sort of like the middle of nowhere, and they struggle to get anywhere. They've got to drive everywhere if they want to get anywhere, and maybe that's why I'm so big into the scene in terms of the music, is because of where I was back when I was listening to it and growing up with it. I was so easily surrounded by it all.
Yeah, that's true actually. Yeah, that definitely being well connected is something that maybe I definitely take it for granted, really, because you're right, when you're having trains and things, it really just open up a world of possibilities when it comes to going out and all of that. So yeah, no, that is cool to hear. I wanted to ask you next about kind of if you can pinpoint the time in your life when you first fell in love with dance music. I know you listened to a mix of things growing up, but can you remember when you first properly started falling in love with dance music? Maybe some of those very first artists that you loved.
What a question that is. I'm probably going to say the first time I went to Ibiza, which would have been, I don't know, maybe 2017, 2018, potentially, I think it was. I don't know, like obviously I went festivals before then, but it was one of them I was going and obviously I was enjoying the music. But when I started to go and understand the music, it was a different ball game. It was like, I'm going to watch this person because I want to see how they DJ, or because I like hearing that music. You know, Creamfields, I met my very first Creamfields in, was it 2013, I think it was. I mean, even saying that, I went to Wakestock in Wales. That was my very first festival in 2012. I'd just come out of high school, and it was 16 or older. As long as you went with someone who was over 18. So obviously we just went over loads of over 18-year-olds who went to our school. And even there, they had Calvin Harris on. And that was, again, you know, they had him and dance scene then was massive. He's still massive now, but like, you know, some of the tracks he had out then, you know, I've been smashing for months before then. So there's little moments, and obviously on the back of that I went to Creamfields again. You know, I was very EDM focused then though, so obviously, you know, there was a lot of, again, like Lesso and Hardwell, and I think I watched Hardwell twice that weekend. That's how like obsessed I was with him at the time. So I think there was obviously that era, but for me to say when I properly fell in love with it in terms of like understanding what the scene was about, it was probably the Ibiza scene. When I finally got to Ibiza and I was like figuring out like how everyone else is in that club with you and all sort of feeling the same. And, you know, you've got all these lineups and you know that people are going to go to certain lineups because they like that particular style of music. I think before then it was just like, I don't know, it was just very split with me. Whereas when you start to go and you know you've got so much on the island, but people are pinpointing things to go to because of that particular event or that particular artist, you know, like Paradise and Circle Loco and whatever, you start to get a completely different vibe then, because everyone is there for the same reason. And I think that's then when you start to realise the actual understanding, the actual love for the scene, because you're there surrounded by similar people rather than, I don't know, should we say, like sometimes I go to events nowadays and you can see people just not enjoying it because they're there for the wrong reasons. I remember going Hideout Festival, and I think it was Alan Fitzpatrick was on. It was 2018, and it was like a back-to-back, I think, with Scream. And it was about 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, the sunrise was coming up, and they were playing like this proper nice sunrise and stuff. And then some guy was stood behind me, he was like, oh, this is rubbish, and he was swearing off the top of his head and all sorts. And I turned around and said, like, what's the matter? He's like, well, it's not drum and bass. It's like, well, no, because it's
he was lost.
Like, well, to the point was there, obviously that festival had so many different genres on so close together. It sometimes created a vibe where you had some people there for the music and some people there just killing the vibe. So I felt like in Ibiza, me personally, I've never experienced that. I've always experienced like really good vibes, and that's when I think I would say I started to really fall in love with the scene. I was like, I think that's when the moment clicked in my head where I wanted to be involved in the scene rather than just a raver in the scene.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more, actually. Not that I've been to Ibiza, but your whole point about you know, feeling when you're surrounded by, you know, people that love the music as much as you do, that is a really unique feeling, and you just can tell straight away, can't you? So no, that makes a lot of sense. How old were you roughly then when you first went to Ibiza? Can you remember, roughly speaking? Making you rack your brains there.
I was quite late to the scene, to be honest. I'm gonna say about 22, 23, maybe a little bit younger. I definitely wasn't below 21 though. So, like I said, I was quite, because of my mixed in genre of music, I just sort of floated from like the age of like 16, 17 up until this moment. So yeah, I mean, I was probably around about that age. I'm gonna say, but yeah, like before then, like I said, I used to just like enjoy going like UK festivals, Creamfields, V Fest. You know what I mean? Like it was just, I think that V Fest one probably summed me up. Actually, I went from who was it before? Was it the Blossoms? I think to Cortinas to then Steve Angelo, and that just my style to a T at the time. But then, yeah, like it was just that just summed me up in terms of how varied it was. And then, like I said, when I went to IB at that age, I think as well I started to mature with the music and started to realise then the names, like I mentioned before, had really kicked on. They were releasing music constantly that was like really pulling me in, and then that's when I think as well as a mixture of EDM and a dance music, that sort of fade as this sort of new sound in tech house came through, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense, definitely. The next thing I wanted to ask you about was kind of when you realized that you really wanted to take producing music seriously. Because I know I was reading online that you started off producing music as a duo with a friend of yours. And I was wondering, did you realize that you really wanted to try and pursue music full time when you were in that duo, or did that turning point in your head not come in? Did that come after you left the duo? I was wondering.
Well, the duo was it was a really exciting time, to be fair. I still look back and like I'm always gutted it didn't kick on, because the buzz that we had and like what people were saying about us and like how we just sort of came out of nowhere. It was, you know, if you pushed the right buttons and we worked harder, it could have gone somewhere. Unfortunately, we just had different, I think a mixture of like, probably back into your question in terms of like career side. I think I really wanted it, and I feel like my mate really wanted it, but just certain things got in the way, and it was causing problems in our own ways, really, like in our own lives and whatever. I mean, at the time I was a single lad, like just wanted to go all the way, and obviously he had a girlfriend at the time, so you know, all of a sudden your boyfriend's not seeing you at weekends, he's playing at left, right and centre, because we weren't even charging, we just wanted to play. So we were playing like two or three sets a weekend just because we were playing for free. But we weren't bothered with that. Obviously, it was right mainly across the Northwest, but we just wanted to play as much as we could. But for whatever reason, we came to an agreement that it wasn't going to work. Now, at that point, I couldn't produce for Toffee. I did not have a clue how to even like. I'd seen Ableton. I tried sitting next to him working on it, and I'd say, "Oh, put this here, put that there." I would never be able to do it myself. So I always dreaded the day if it happened, because I knew in this scene to try and break through, I'm going to have to produce. You know, that's just the fact, really. You know, I know you get some old school DJs who are unreal DJs and don't really have to produce, but 99% of DJs nowadays have to produce to become, well known in the scene. So when that moment came, sort of like stepped back and went like, shit, like what am I going to do now? Because I don't really know what I'm doing. And that was the moment where it was a bit like sink or swim, because people started to get to know who I was through the duo. The problem was I had nothing to back it up other than I could DJ. So luckily enough, just before we did split for a couple of months, but we had a couple of sessions with Kinnaman, who I'm still good mates with, really close with, and still continue to have lessons now and again with him. But he was a big help. He probably kicked me on with the lessons. Like I was blocking out a number of hours to really get me up to scratch at a quick pace. He was giving me resources that I still use to this day, like loads of indoor plugins and all sorts. And he really got me up to a pace where I could make an okay track. I listen back to him now and go, I even released some of them when I first started. And it's always an ongoing joke with my mates, is like, why did we ever release some of them? But it's a story, it's a journey of where it came from. So, it is what it is. But yeah, I think it was a scary moment, because it was literally, like I said, it was sink or swim. If I didn't get into the production side of things, it was going to take me a lot longer than what I originally hoped for. So when I spoke to Kinnaman and I got lessons and I watched a lot of YouTube tutorials and spent so many hours just self-teaching as well on the back of what I was learning from Kinnaman, when things started to come together, that's when I really found the motivation to put more extra in and go, right, okay, this is working. I'm getting good feedback. I'm getting some support. Some labels are interested. And it just started building gradually from there, to be honest.
God, no, that is it's really interesting to hear that, actually. And it's great as well that you had somebody that could really step in and kind of show you the ropes of production, because I mean, Ableton is notoriously complicated, isn't it? I mean, I've only ever tried Logic, and then I say Ableton, it's like another language. So no, it's great to hear that you had somebody that could give you a helping hand with that, and then, you know, here you are with all these incredible tracks. So very interesting to hear. Yeah, so thank you for that. I wanted to ask you, so thinking back to your first gig, first performance, which I presume was back when you were still in the duo with that mate of yours. Can you remember your very first gig? And if so, what was it like? How did you feel before the gig? How did you feel after? Oh no, he's shaking his head.
Absolute nightmare. I couldn't even beat that. I could not even beat that. So we'd only be, basically, a little background on the duo was, it was me and a mate from another lad from Warrington. And I went to Pirate Studios one night, put a little clip on my story, and he replied saying, "Oh mate, I'm into be DJing. We should go to the studio together." So next week we went to the studio together. And I was like, yeah, we probably buzz off each other. Took a couple of mates with us, like, boys, like, you two proper vibe. It's a sick vibe and all this. So we thought, let's sit down, let's chat it out. So literally about 10 minutes after that, we were like, yeah, let's go with it. So we went with this duo, thought of a name, which I'm not going into because it's embarrassing, but we went into like this, we got going with it. And like I said, I think it was about 2 or 3 weeks later, the local club, we got into the local club, sent a few messages out. It was like, yeah, boys, like, we'll get you on. So like shit, like how soon? It was like, well, you know, it was a big weekend. What was it? It was it was a payday weekend. I can't remember what date it was. It was in the summer, but it was payday weekend, so you knew it was going to be a busy Saturday, and he gave us a headline slot. So it wasn't like a proper event, but it was just like, you know, these boys are going to be playing, and we had a 90-minute set as well. And we both never played in a club before, but I still at this point I had no confidence on the decks. Only been in the Pirate Studios about 3 or 4 times. The little decks I had were like tiny little Newmark with half the dials missing and all sorts, like still using the computer. And the next minute I was put in front of these CDJs that I've only ever seen in Pirate Studio with no one watching me. And it was one of them, the club owner, he was like coming behind, having to still nudge it, and you know, so it's in beat matching, and it was funny because obviously like the drinks were flowing and whatever. We really enjoyed it. It was a proper laugh, and like all our mates were there. I think it was like hundreds of our mates. Some of that brought like stupid amount each because it was our first set. But I look back now and go, how did anyone ever let me go near them decks at that time? Yeah, it was one of them moments where, you know, like interviews like this, you look back and you tell that story, and it's like, you know, that's where the journey began. You know, all your mates are there, you're playing for free in your local club, you've never seen these decks properly before in front of a packed club, but you know, we had each other side by side to help each other out, nudge you a little bit, and yeah, we got through it in the end. But that's when that was my first ever set.
Yeah, I appreciate your honesty, definitely. And you know, yeah, I think you're completely right. You've got to start somewhere, haven't you? And it's great to hear you be so honest. And like you say, I mean, it's, in a way, it must make it even more rewarding, right, to see where you are now. You know, opening events for, you know, Amelie Lens and the like, and, you know, looking back at that, it must be very rewarding to see the progression, you know.
I think it continues right the way through. Like, you know, even still to this day, like I'm warming up for some big bands, for example, like Music in Sheffield. I warmed up the main room at Code Warehouse for Jamie Jones. The one was for Melee. Denis Sulta, and you know, there's been other places where before then I've warmed up for people not as big, but I think at the minute there's some people who, don't get me wrong, fair play to them, they get an opportunity straight away, but you learn yourself as a DJ and what it's all about. Like having to set the pace or having to throw yourself in the deep end a little bit is what makes you become a DJ. Everyone's so obsessed nowadays about not making mistakes. And, you know, I get sent a message, you know, every now and again, Ben, I can't do this mix. I just keep messing up. Don't worry about it. Like, you know, that's because you're experimenting. That's because you're taking risks. And for me, DJing is all about taking that risk. I mean, it's a excite a crowd. Obviously, if you're warming up, it's a different type of risk. You know, it's choosing the right sort of music and the right pace and setting that pace for a room. And I think it's important right across the board, whether it's throwing yourself in at the deep end with your first set, a bit like what we got chucked into. Because a lot of people would have turned that down and said, I'm not ready. But when are you ever going to be ready? You know, you just got to go in it. For me, you just got to jump in it with 2 feet and do a little bit of research about it and understand what sort of vibe it could be. But at the same time, you know, nothing can go wrong, really, in my opinion. You just enjoy yourself with it and you just learn. For me, as a DJ in them situations, better than being given the opportunity on a plate, really.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's a great mentality to have, actually. And I think it's something that a lot of people watching who are getting into DJing will definitely be inspired by as well, for sure. So I wanted to ask you, bit of a big question. It's probably hard to single out one particular person, but who do you think's helped you the most to get where you are today? Parents, there we go. That's good.
Because, you know, the equipment, you know, I originally went through a stage where I had a set of decks and then I got rid of them because I just didn't really have the time. And then I went into like an apprentice route. I thought I was going to go into PE teaching. So I thought, well, I'm at uni, I don't need all this, the decks and all that. So I sold them, then I ended up buying them back after uni. And then that was the moment after that when I got them decks back, the exact same decks from my mate. And I realised I needed something bigger and better because I was getting, like we said, I was part of this duo then. We were getting booked around and we were still using rubbish decks to practice on. So we bought, I spoke to my mum and dad, and to be fair, I ended up paying, I think I got finance on these RX2 all-in-one controller, but it was just like, you know, straight in the USB. Now, obviously, financially was helped by my parents, but at the same time, you know, having a bedroom where you could just play music till whatever time to practice all hours, you know, every single day, just making sure I was perfect on the decks, as perfect as I could be, and make sure when I was taking them risks, I was confident in it. You know, some people don't have that opportunity. Some people have to go and book out the private studios or whatever. And I feel like, yeah, I owe them a big thanks. And even still, not so much nowadays, but like I've recently moved back to my parents before moving to Manchester in a couple of weeks. And I've had to move here for like a month or so. And, you know, it's more so now, obviously, the production side. And I'm in here till about 11:30, 12 o'clock for the speakers still in full blast. And then obviously I go into my headphones. But I think over the time, they've been like really supportive in terms of, like I said, you know, they've never sort of, I hear sometimes a couple of parents saying, oh, what do you want to get into that for? You know, you'll be doing all that scene, and sort of completely crushing people's ambitions. So I think financially and the space, and obviously that they've allowed me to practice daily and constantly do the editing back when I first started. You know, if I had to keep going to private studios, I probably wouldn't have lasted. It would have became financially a problem, and also, you know, the effort of getting there into after work. So I would probably definitely have to say them. As cliche as that may be, I would have to say my parents are probably the ones who've helped the most in terms of getting to where I'm hoping to go.
Yeah, I think that's really striking, actually, and I don't think it's cliched either. I think a lot of us are guilty of this. I think, you know, if we're lucky enough to have supportive parents, I think most of us are guilty of not kind of waking up to that often enough. So you know, I think that's really great to hear, genuinely.
I must add though, they don't mind on a Saturday morning when it's a bit of disco. So that's when it's Saturday at 10:30, the heavy techno or something's coming out. that's when you're like, right, Ben, turn it down or shut up.
So it depends on the time of the week and what mood they're in. Yeah, I can imagine. That's very cool to hear. So next thing I wanted to ask, so I know that you've released on Solardo's label, Solar, obviously a big, massive label in tech house for sure. I was wondering what it was like to work with the duo, because I mean, I know they're so well known the world over by now. What's it been like working with them and releasing on their label?
To be honest with you, I really enjoyed it. I mean, the moment I got the confirmation was like a moment I'll never forget. Like, that was probably the moment where I thought, right, you know, it's happening type of thing. It's like, right, okay, there's a big label interested. And obviously it's Solardo, who, as I mentioned before, I was listening to their tracks, some like Tribesman and Aztec or whatever. You know, I've watched him so many times before then. So it wasn't only just, it was working with a duo, it was also role models as well for me. You know, there's a few in that list, but Solardo were definitely up there. And in terms of working with them, they were great. They were really supportive. They supported me with music on multiple things at Musicon in Miami when they played there. I think they played a 4-hour set and they played it there. They played it on the Elro live stream at Tobacco Docks as well. There was loads of other places that they played it. And in terms of working with them directly, obviously we didn't have to do much of that because obviously my manager dealt with their label management. So there was that side to it, which helped a lot, because when it comes to label stuff and contracts, it's straight over my head. But in terms of, like, you know, the communication, speaking to him on the socials or whatever, you know, we were just coming out of that COVID stuff. So I'm sure there'd have been more opportunities to met him or whatever before then. But as the release came out, I think it was about a month after COVID, after that Freedom weekend. So, which timed in great because the track was called Freedom. So it was great timing. But yeah, I really enjoyed working with the Solardo lads, and the label itself. They were great, and where they pushed it to, and the support it received, you know, was great. It was a massive achievement.
No, that's good to hear. Definitely. Thank you for that. I also wanted to ask about the fact that you've opened for, you've warmed up for Amelie Lenz and Jamie Jones as well, which is a massive achievement considering, I mean, especially considering career-wise, I would say you're still at quite an early stage, you know, with how, you know, with like the trajectory of where you're going to be, I'm sure. So I wanted to ask you, how did it feel to have your name on the bill with such big artists? Has that begun to feel normal yet, now that it's happened a few times?
It'll never feel normal. You know, like, again, you know, it's role models like Jamie Jones. That was obviously the main one, but there's been others like Lackman and Ben Sterling, Darius Sarosian. It's been a fair few, but it doesn't, to me, I'm a type of person who always remembers where I come from. So it's like, again, it's a big part in the game. I've seen DJs where they get on these lineups and the red blows, and next minute, you know, in a couple of years, you don't hear of them because they've got so ahead of themselves. To be fair, my manager's been really helpful with this, keeping me like level-headed. But I've always, because I've seen it firsthand prior getting into the scene, or as getting into the scene, I've seen it's not an attractive look, and it can go the opposite way. So it isn't. Don't get me wrong. When you see the lineup come through, you get the booking come through, and you see the lineup, you're like, it's a very surreal moment. But in the same sense, it's also when you get the headline booking. So there's been, I think there's like 4 or 5, maybe a little bit more headline bookings I've received that have come through. Again, that's equally surreal when you see it at the top, with the labels you've achieved and released on under your name and whatever. Again, some people say, well, it's only a flare, but no, to me, like that, from where I am, that's like a massive achievement. So they're both equally as surreal, to be honest. But no, the feeling will never get, I don't think the feeling will ever get normal. It'll just always be an unreal feeling when you see it come through. And it's like, it's a bit of a, I think it's a bit of a wake me up moment, to be honest.
And is it a similar experience for you, a similar feeling when you see your music being played by other DJs kind of all over the world? I noticed on your Instagram, pool parties, clubs, all over the place, all over the world now. We've got DJs there playing your tracks. Does that feel equally surreal still? Or is that...
Yeah, I would say it's still, depending on where it is. Like, some of it is like, I mean, no, obviously depends on what we're talking about. If you're talking about like the big names playing it, it's always surreal. However, I do love it when I'm getting sent videos from like South America. I got one sent the other day from the low res release. It was like in the middle of nowhere in the mountains of Argentina.
Wow.
And it was like a view of like all the mountains, and then my track was getting played. Everyone was loving it, and I was just like, that again was like, wow, okay. And I didn't know who the DJ was, and obviously now I do, and I've obviously spoke to him a lot and thanked him for the support. But that's also, you know, I've had a few of them that have come through in South America. But at the same time, any big support that I get, whether it's on a guest mix, whether it's on, you know, their own weekly mixes, whether it's out in the crowd and out in the clubs and they get sent a video, it's always it's an unreal feeling. It's a big sigh of relief. It's like, right, all them hours, all them. Sometimes some of the tracks can become really stressful. I think there was a couple of big ones for me. Just back on the solo release. So we had, I did that. The voice on that was Leah Rose, who I'm really good mates with. That's our second track together. We've got a third one in the making at the moment. And Eldon, I've got another good mate of mine, Eldon, did a remix on that. So that was a really nice release in terms of like my mates with me on that release as well. Now we had a play by, again, a good mate of mine who is known by Cream. He opened up the Arc stage last Creamfields, and yeah, he said he was going to play it. So I went down with a few of my mates and that, and he played our track Freedom on his Arc stage as people were coming in. And don't get me wrong, it was just like surrounded by Scousers, but obviously hearing your tracks playing now, it was just a bit of a surreal feeling from where like I'm from and all my mates there, and obviously with it being my only track. I think that was a massive moment because obviously been going Creamfields for God knows how many years before then. I was watching, like I said before, you know, Hardwell and whatever on them stages. Next to it, my tracks getting played on there. So whether it was a warm up or not, you know, it was still my mate playing one of my tracks on the Arc stage at Creamfields. I think the other moment would have to be Archie Hamilton playing two of mine at the Depot in December at Kaluki. Again, when we talk about does it become normal, I think that was one of them moments. Like, again, I had like 5 or 6 new mates there. My sister and her boyfriend had gone missing, so somewhere in the Depot. And obviously they missed both tracks, not one, both completely missed both tracks. And when it started coming through, I was like, okay, I think this is mine. I wanted to double check before I started telling mates, like, yeah, this is mine. And then, yeah, obviously, like, they were proper like gassing me up and everything. And then the people around me then are getting to know it was me track. And because I'd been raving at Wales Project as well, again, you know, it falls back to that story of like Creamfields, been going there for years as the brand. That was a massive, again, another wake up call. It was like, wow, like what I'm doing here really is working and it's paying off. And then when he played the second one, my head had completely fell off. Then it was just like 2 tracks in one night. So yeah, but again, you know, that was a bit different again because that was a huge name, Archie Hamilton playing him. So I think they were probably the 2 big moments for me where, like, when you talk about surreal moments, it was like, yeah, that they were both emotional, to be fair.
Yeah, it sounds crazy, to be honest. I mean, I can imagine it's particularly mad when it's a venue or a festival or an event that you have so many memories going to when you were younger, and then, you know, being back there and hearing your own music there must be stuff of dreams. So yeah, that's crazy. That's amazing. Next thing I just wanted to ask you was, I know that you've played quite a bit in Sheffield. I know you move into Manchester quite soon as well. So I wanted to ask you about your thoughts on bassline music, which is quite big in the north. I was wondering whether you're into it or not, because I know it's one of those things that is a bit of a Marmite genre. It's all right if you're not, but I was interested whether it's something you like or you don't.
Anyone who knows me will tell you I won't go anywhere near it. I haven't got anything against it. You know, bassline, garage, drum and bass, whatever. I haven't got anything against it. I appreciate people like different music. I've always said this, you know, whatever, but I've just never ever got myself. I've just never found it any good to me. It's just,
yeah.
You know, So go on.
You and me both, to be honest. I don't feel bad. I mean, I'm from Leeds, and again, it's an expectation that you love electronic music, you're from the north, you've got to be into your bass line. But yeah, no, I've tried to like it, but no, I do agree with you.
My next door neighbour used to be going out with I don't know whether he's quite well known, but I think he was getting there, to be fair. And I had advised him, because the local club in Warrington was asking for them type of DJs, and I recommended him, and he ended up playing a set, and apparently that was amazing. So, I'm not one of them who's like, I'm not like a music snob, like, oh no, I don't want anything to do with it. If there's opportunities and I know people, I'll always try and help them still. But no, like, I just couldn't. Yeah. I don't know. I just never got into it. So why would I get into it now? Type of thing. It's just I know what I like, and I don't see myself getting into it at all.
No, I appreciate your honesty, to be honest. Yeah, no, I appreciate your honesty, definitely. And you're completely right. I mean, there's no shaming people that like it, but everyone's got their own tastes, and it was interesting just to get your view on it, for sure. So thank you for that as well. Last thing I wanted to ask you, just before we move on to the next part of the interview, is if you could name a track that was particularly influential in your journey in dance music.
I think I'm going to have to go back to the EDM days.
Okay.
I know some people who are going to watch this back, especially my mates, are going to go, no. But I didn't discover tech house till after that. So I can't lie and say, oh, it was, the Patrick Topping or the Richy Ahmed days, because I was into the dance music well before then. So, there was a couple, like, there was Alesso, If I Lose Myself, there was Sebastian Grosso, Calling. But I think one that was quite like, I don't know, you always have these tracks that are quite like emotional on you. It was probably like Sweet House Mafia, Don't You Worry Child. I think between that and Greyhound, but I think that would have to be the one that I thought that really like drew me in. I was like, right, okay, I love this type of music. And then I think around that, then obviously it was all that same era. It was all like that 2012, 2013 sort of era. That then stayed for a bit, but I would say if I give my view from the tech house point of view, which was 2014, 2015, I think when I got into it, that era, you had like Dusky, Careless, that was massive for me. Walking around like Bigger Than Prince, with Green Velvet, and then, that era was again, that was when it started to change into tech house for me, where I was like, right, I like this. But it's hard to put one track on. Let's go with Sweet House Mafia, Don't Worry Child, because back to the roots.
I mean, it's a legendary track, isn't it? I think it was one of the, I'm trying to wrap my brain, I think one of the last ones they put out, right, before they disbanded. So I remember that being a really iconic one from them, for sure. So no, a good choice, definitely a very good choice. It's great to hear you being genuine as well, and about the fact that was one of the tracks that you really loved early on as well, before moving on to the tech house side of things afterwards. So yeah, thank you for that, definitely. What we're going to move on to now, last bit of the interview, which is a bit of fun. It is the speed round. So essentially, these are just 10 questions, some of which are a bit silly, a bit stupid, some of which are music related. And the idea is that you just kind of answer them as quick as possible, kind of just the first thing that comes to mind for you. So let's get started. Right, so first one, Daft Punk or Kerry Chandler?
Daft Punk.
Daft Punk. Disco or techno?
Disco.
Disco. R&B or rap?
R&B.
Right, next one. Would you rather live in the center of a city or in the remote countryside?
Center of the city.
See, that's I see. That seems like a given now. Now that I know you're moving to Manchester, this is why I should have. Anyway, would you rather be royalty 1,000 years ago or an average person today?
Average person today.
Would you rather oversleep every day for a week or not get any sleep at all for 4 days?
Not get any sleep in 4 days. It's a waste of time.
Yeah. Would you rather only be able to whisper or only be able to shout?
Whisper.
Okay. Would you rather go vegan for a month or only eat meat and dairy for a month?
Only eat meat and dairy for a month.
Yeah, I'd have to agree, to be honest. Would you rather never use social media again or never watch another movie ever again?
Never watch another movie.
Okay. Oh, fair.
I don't really watch movies. I'm always in the studio.
That's fair enough. I was going to say, yeah, that makes sense. And last one, would you rather have all traffic lights you approach be green or never have to stand in a queue again?
Never have to stand in a queue again. If I'm going on festivals and raves.
There are some awful ones, aren't there? I think we've all got those memories of like hours and hours and hours.
I remember I went from Jamie Jones and when I spotted Jamie Jones for music, I could get a train at 5:30 straight to Warrington. So it would have got me. Yeah, I would have gotten at 5:30, and then my mum was like, "Well, save you 50 quid, in terms of the hotel, and I'll get you." I think it got me in at about 7:30 in the morning, and I got on that, and then I got to Creamfields for 8 o'clock on the Saturday morning, and I was like, I think it was like the fifth from the front of the queue. It was the best thing I ever did. I had like barely any sleep whatsoever. I think I had about an hour on the train, but I was thinking to myself, this is great because I know I've got no queue. My tent was already set up by my mates. So it was like, this is great. But then I got there, I was meant to sleep then for a bit, but obviously I was inside and everything. Didn't actually sleep in until obviously the night time, but it was the best thing I ever did was just going straight to the Creamfields rather than going home, then having to do all them long queues and everything. I just couldn't. No,
I might have to try that tactic in the future actually and just brave it. As much as I love my sleep, the festival queues are just the very, very worst, aren't they? I think particularly in the UK, we're not great with them, are we? I mean, so I might have to try that tactic, to be honest, and just brave it. Thank you so much for joining me today. Last thing I just wanted to ask, is there anything you want to leave with viewers before you head off? Anything you want to say to viewers before you head off?
No, I mean, if anyone's on here who's been supporting my music, then first of all, thanks for all the support. If you don't know who I am yet, go and check out my socials. There's Ben Walsh DJ, probably UK to be fair, on a lot of the socials. So yeah, just go and check out SoundCloud, Spotify, Instagram, anything really. And yeah, if you carry on supporting, then that'd be great.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.